So I think the heart rate variability is a great snapshot in time to see how the system is generally functioning, and how the person is dealing with their perceived external environment.
Hello, and welcome to the Energy Flow podcast. I'm Kelly Kennedy, and I am here to discuss all things energy, fascia, lymphatics, oxygen, and water. Over my 26 years of being on this journey and 19 years in clinical practice, dealing with chronically ill, chronically pained, to the optimizing of health and to everything in between, we have learned throughout these years how to efficiently and effectively teach people how the body works, get them engaged in that system, help them understand how the universe works and how those two connect. And that's what this Energy Flow podcast is about. Whether you are new to us or you've been a longtime listener of over 4 years now, we are so happy and honored to share our heart's honest truth about what we know, what has worked for us, what's worked in the clinical practice, and what might be the key to your next step in your journey. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for sharing this with all that it will resonate with. We look forward to each and every moment of our genuine connection. Thank you for listening. I'm so grateful that today, as we open this podcast of the Energy Flow Forum, that's really been my body of work, as well as the technique and the forum. I'm very excited for everybody to experience the secret weapon, as I call it recently, of true wellness, the true energy flow, how it all started. I and Kenny, my husband, and so grateful that we get to talk about what we get to talk about today, and that everybody listening gets to experience his wisdom and his perspective, which is always unique and beautiful. And I'm so grateful for all of you that are here, that are listening, and that contribute to the second part of the podcast, because he'll go deeper on the second part. And I'm so grateful for all of you that follow us and consistently and loyally listen. I truly know that, and I so appreciate that. Thank you so much. I am Kelly Kennedy, and this is my husband, Ian.
Hello.
And we started this journey together 27 years ago, but that was not where his journey started. So I am not going to really talk much. Your journey started way before 27 years ago. And what I wanted, we were having a conversation the other night about being and about subject A, subject B, I think is what you call it, right? Mm-hmm. And the conversation has always been, my story has always been, oh, well, which is the truth, right? Like, came to the office that third visit, was like, okay, how did you do that? How did on the second visit when we handled pain? The first visit was about money. Second visit was about pain, all doing a non-invasive vibrational technique in the 90s. Mm-hmm. And I came to him on the third visit and basically said, how did you do it? I mean, not basically, that's exactly what I said. Mm-hmm. And his response, man, a few words, not today, but man, a few words, said, energy. And his name's Ian. I thought he was being a wise butt. And I was like, yeah, that's cute. You did it. But literally, how'd you do it? And he goes, cool, huh? I'm like, no. In my body, I thought, I didn't have the voice that I have now. I thought, it's not very cool at all, actually. You're not answering my question. You're being very evasive. What the heck is energy? And he goes, I said, how do I keep the pain from away? That's what I said. I said, how do I make sure the pain doesn't come back? And he says, be. And I was very confused. And then about that time, the timer went off and my 15 minutes was over and I owed my $90. And that was that. Oh, my battery's going to die. We got to plug it in. Otherwise, this recording's going to be cut short. So at that point, I'll find the battery the cord while he takes over. So at that point, I began this journey 27 years, and many of you have been following me forever. You know my side of the story, as we say. And what I asked Ian to do was tell his side of the story of what that means of B. B, for me, is energy flow and all the science that you're held at with True Wellness, both in physicality and as well as all the education and the Flow Forum and the Flow Podcast, the Energy Flow Podcast, the Energy Flow Forum, is all about being. Energy flow is being. And I would like you to discuss that at your perspective as I go get the energy
needed to keep the
cord to keep it all going.
Okay. So
Take it away.
when Kelly asked me, how did you do that? I didn't have a good answer, so I said energy, huh? No, I'm kidding. Because I didn't really do anything other than allow some blocked energy to start to flow again through that young woman's system. And so how did we do that? Well, we did a bunch of different things to shift on some level her autonomic nervous system and her emotional regulation so that the pain, her concern was the pain would come back. So what do I need to do to make sure the pain doesn't come back? Well, there's really nothing you need to do to make sure the pain doesn't come back. And I understand that perspective, of course. You know, you're in pain for a long time and then suddenly it seems to be gone. How do I make sure it doesn't come back? So when I said to her, well, it's energy, what I really should have said was, we removed enough blockages for this energy to flow so that you're no longer in pain. Because in traditional Chinese medicine, pain is a manifestation of a blocked energy in some way, whether it's a meridian or in the fascia or in a muscle or in my emotions. If there's some kind of blockage, it's eventually going to try to be overruled by manifesting pain to get some attention on the situation. So the body goes, I need attention. So once we gave it the attention and the pain went away, the next question was, well, how do I make sure this doesn't come back? And so when I said, well, just go be, that was a short answer to be able to say, you don't have to focus on the idea of it not coming back. And I should have probably said, there's going to be times in your life when pain comes back because pain happens, right? It's an indication that the body needs attention or my psyche needs attention. But at that time, it was like, hey, all you need to do is just go back into your life and not necessarily focus on the idea of how do I make sure this pain doesn't come back. And what we've learned over the years, I think, is that some people, not everybody, but some people get to the point where they're so concerned over their health situation or even the fantasy of something might happen in the future that I start to so focus on that becomes a problem. So I think for me at that time with you, it was like, hey, just let it all go.
It becomes a problem in the fact it becomes symptoms, it becomes
I'm constantly watching what's happening to my system, and every little thing might make me go, oh, is there something wrong with me? Instead of going, that's just something my body's doing right now in this moment for whatever reason. I want to make sure, am I regulating all the time? If I'm regulating all the time, then I'm not going to have a lot of concerns over how my system's functioning.
And that's what B meant to you, was regulation, even though you maybe not put in those terms at that point. But then through the science of understanding energy, really, through pleomorphism, and terrain medicine, and orgone, and all the things.
And that foundation, right, it became that language and that foundation of the idea that if there's pain, there's stuck energy in some fashion in the body. And if there's flow, then there should be no manifestation of pain.
Or illness.
Yeah. I mean, illness can be an aspect of good regulation, though, right? Every once in a while we run into that person that goes, I haven't been sick in 35 years. And I go, that means you don't regulate.
So what does that mean? So if I get sick, you don't mean chronic illness.
No, right.
You mean acute.
Correct.
Acute immune
I want to get a cold once in a while. I want to get a flu once in a while. I want to respond to all of those things.
Or I'm sleeping in a moldy building for 3 weeks and I'm starting to notice sinuses because.
And then if I get myself out of there, I should be able to recover from that, right?
Right.
So that's all an indication of good regulation. So yeah, if I had the verbiage at the time, I would have said, oh, you're regulating well, you don't have to worry about making sure this pain doesn't come back. Right. So at the time, for me, it was more of an almost esoteric thing in going, you don't need to do anything, you just need to go be. Allow your body to now be the way it is, right? Yeah, you become aware of existence and consciousness and know that that's the ground level, and then you can manage everything else.
So now, in the language that you have with regulation, can you explain regulation from the concept of subject A, subject B?
Sure. So one of the easier ways, I think, to understand how my body responds, or how all bodies respond to their environment, is to go to the place to separate it out in subject A, which, let's say subject A is me, and subject B is everything else that I come in contact with in the universe, no matter what that is, okay? And so I find that there's three things that happen. So if I'm subject A, and anything of subject B comes into my electromagnetic field, right? Because we all know we have an electromagnetic field.
And that's what come in contact means.
That's what come in contact means. It doesn't mean you have to touch this substance. You just need to be in a certain distance from a certain range from a particular vibration. It might be a real strong vibration, so maybe you could be farther away, or it might be a relatively what we would consider a weak vibration. You might need to be closer to it. But regardless, you don't necessarily have to touch the substance for your body to have an autonomic nervous system response.
The intensity of the frequency.
So I'm A, and B comes in. Three things can happen. B rises my electrical frequency. Right, so we're going to look at the electricity flowing through my body in the appropriate fashion as a good thing, right? We want good electrical flow. And so B comes into my electromagnetic field and it rises my electrical energy. It actually causes an ease on my system, okay? That's one thing that can happen. The other thing that can happen is that B comes into my electromagnetic field and it's neutral to A. It doesn't rise it and it doesn't lower it. Or B comes into my electromagnetic field and B drains my electromagnetic field. It drains the electricity moving through my system. And these are things that we see on simple muscle testing. Because if I hold a simple muscle test, the body's always deciding whether or where that electricity needs to go. So it's always going to shut off a muscle and allow an organ to be protected by that electricity. So it's a simple sympathetic, parasympathetic. So you can take anything, any frequency, and start to move it into someone's electromagnetic field during a muscle test and find that there's a distance where the body responds to it. I also think this is why children want to touch their food, because the body's getting an indication as to whether or not that rises my electricity or lowers my electricity or is neutral to my electricity. The body's making a decision before I put anything in my mouth or right up against my body.
So can you explain the example you used with a client the other day? I thought that was such an elegant and way to understand the range that frequency has and the muscle response test. Because again, I just want to reiterate that what we're discussing is the electrical system of the body, right? When we're talking about energy flow, we have 5 bodies, as we say, right? And 3 brains. And of the 5 bodies, one is the energetic system, and that energetic system is the electrical body that runs the battery, so to speak, that when it slows down from a wave into a particle, that's when you see electrical impulse on a monitor, whether that's an EKG or a heart rate variability,
right? But
that's the frequency of the body. And what we're talking about in vibrational and frequency medicine is, and what Ian's discussing is subject A, subject B. Does this frequency and this frequency, when they come together, does one rise the other? Does it just become neutral because they're harmonizing? Or is it one lowers it because it influences that in a negative way? It causes dissonance in the body, essentially.
And what we need to realize is that A is doing the exact same thing to B. So those 3 things are happening to each other. So maybe B comes in and it rises mine, but I actually maybe lower B's. That's a possibility. Or B goes, I'm neutral. But so those 3 things are happening on both sides.
On individual levels, and it's a bi-directional communication system.
Yeah. So I said to a client the other day,
magnetic field.
Right.
And that's the contact, is 2 magnetic fields.
Right.
So like the plants behind us have a magnetic field.
And your system's reacting to that on some level.
Crystal has a magnetic field because it's alive. The wood in this,
even what we think of inanimate still has a frequency. Everything does, right? Everything does. So my system is going to respond. It's responding to the chair. It's responding to Kelly. It's responding. Depends on how big my electromagnetic field is, because outside of that, apparently through the clinical testing that I've done outside of that for the person, there's no reaction, right?
Right.
So my system's blind to something that's 15 feet away.
That's a really good point.
Okay, my system's blind to something 15 feet away. So as I move through my world, I come in contact with different things. Those different things rise my energy, or neutral to my energy, or lower my energy. That for us in a health experience is, and I don't like good or bads or negatives or positives, but in a health experience, do I want my electricity running through my system easily and flowing appropriately? Would I consider that a good thing? If something comes in contact with me and we find that we're neutral, is that an okay thing? If I come into contact with something that seems to lower my electrical energy, would I consider that a good thing? So I think most practitioners go, no, that's not necessarily a good thing. I want everything to rise or at least be neutral to me, right? And when we do emotional work, the goal is to be neutral. What? Why would I want to be neutral? Because neutrality allows greater free will. So if I don't have a response to a rainy day is just as good as a sunny day, even though I might prefer a sunny day to go play with Silas. A rainy day doesn't screw me up. So it needs to be the same thing with everything I come in contact with. And when I do this with clients, the reason I want them to understand this is because it makes everything else we do make so much more sense. Oh, wait a minute. So I had a wonderful young lady on the table the other day. We were doing simple muscle testing, and I took a frequency signature vial, right? And I held it way out away from him. We did simple muscle testing.
Well, let's frequency signature vial. Let's just give, for those that don't know what that is. So they're little tiny vials, 1 mLs, a little bit of liquid in it, of saline.
Yeah, made by a company.
An imprint of an electronic magnetic signature, which is a vibration, a frequency,
right,
that's imprinted into the water, and the water holds the information, because water is the vessel that holds the information. It's in a glass vial, and it represents whatever the label says that they imprinted into it. So,
and since we're 70% water, it's actually those two beings of water coming together and exchanging information. And one system goes, oh, I'm great with you, or I'm neutral to you, or hey, why are you weakening me? So what I did with her was I took that, you could take anything, it doesn't really matter, but they're very strong, right? So it represents a big signal, as opposed to having the same thing in a baby food jar, for instance. And I started to muscle test her, and she had a good locked muscle, which just means electrical energy is flowing to that muscle. It's a sympathetic experience. I said, I'm going to push on your arm. She said, okay, I'll resist. So now I've got her in a sympathetic. And as I brought that frequency closer and closer to her, once I got into a certain range, that locked muscle, that electricity suddenly disappeared. And she found that the lock was something she couldn't hold anymore. And we did it several times, and she suddenly went, oh, wow, I get it. Everything around me, if it gets in with about 2 to 3 feet, my system has a response to it. Even before I eat this food or touch something, I have a response. And I say yes. And that's a primary function of how we look at, is the body healthy, staying healthy, how can we help it get healthy? Because that's an informational exchange. And I think ultimately in the next 25, 30 years, 50 years, it'll finally come to the point where informational medicine is what is the norm, and
the
people,
primary.
Really showing that just give the body new information, set it in a certain way, and that information takes over and becomes a physical manifestation. And there's docs out there that have written books on that, and next 15, 20, 50 years, that'll catch up. So that's what we were doing, and ultimately, that leads us to a place of going, well, what do I need to do to stay healthy? And you just need to be. You need to be in response to everything else that's happening.
Be able to respond appropriately.
Yeah.
So, I was thinking about something in the house that I might react to, but I don't think there's anything, because I don't think we have any cashews. It's about the only thing I really respond to at this point in my life. And I was going to show and demonstrate muscle tests, but on your muscle testing class, which we're going to and give a good discount, actually. Okay. We're going to, after this podcast is released, we're going to offer a 50% discount, a little bit, almost. It's going to be $23 versus $47.
Wow.
But it's going to give them access to that 2-hour class that you did on muscle response testing, to teach people how muscle testing works, how to administer yourself, because it is really a tool that allows you to empower you to have access to, does energy flow or does energy not flow, which really becomes the question. That's what you're looking for. That's the, I was doing a slide deck recently for my upcoming Divine Heart, which already had launched by the time we do this. And I wrote, to be or not to be is not the question. Does energy flow? Does energy not flow is the question. Or really that's what to be or not to be is.
Right.
Is does energy flow? Does energy not flow? It's not really a vice versa. It's the same wording. It's the same thing worded differently. Because he said be, I said energy flow. So it's not to be or to not to, is to be or not to be is the question. Is does energy flow? Does energy not flow through the system and through the field, interacting with all the other live fields around it and the combination of those fields.
Yes. Sure.
Because it's often, as we say, it's not the one thing, it's the multi-causational, it's always multi-causational. It's that one thing that tips you over that a lot of people chase, but it's not the tipping point, it's the root cause, the cumulative
build up
effect,
over a long period of time.
the accumulation of the burden that's caught up and isn't flowing out for various reasons.
Sure. And you can take that concept in a lot of different directions, including, so what happens when energy doesn't flow?
Okay.
What happens when there's no energy anymore? What do we consider that?
Dead.
You're dead. So when there's no energy flow, we consider that dead.
Well, I've recently coined, is it dead or is it transformed?
Well, it's transformed because you can't quite tell necessarily, because once my brain stops and my heart stops and my body temperature drops and all of that, there's still lots of cells alive and bacteria that's alive, and you can't necessarily say when that's over. But yes, I totally agree, it's a transformation. But it's a lack of energy flow.
Through the physical.
Or absolutely, you lose contact with that which is physical. Right? Because this is the vessel that takes me to the physical world. So I'm just saying, in a funny way, energy flow, as long as there's energy flowing, it's like,
beep, 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 beep.
then I'm good to go, right?
That
shows no energy flow, no
from
more
the
electrical
heart.
energy.
From the heart, from the electrical, because you can
My
be
brain can be
dead.
fried, well, yeah.
You
and
can
the heart
have no
can still
brain
go.
wave and still heart, but once the heart goes, you're done.
Yeah. And once the heart goes, though, there's several minutes before the brain starts to die, because it's a lack of oxygen at that point. So the brain does last for somewhere 5-6 minutes.
As does the ecosystem of the moon.
For a long time after
for a
that.
long time, which is why if you don't cremate the body, it decays over time.
Yeah, sure, it goes through
And
because of
the
its
ecosystem that
digesting
it is.
itself.
Right.
Of course.
Which
So
is
it's just funny in regards to...
very pleasant conversation.
No, it's good. We talk
it's good.
about
We talk
energy
about
flow,
technology.
and I don't want it to always be esoteric energy flow. It's like, hey, if there's no energy flow, guess what?
Right.
You're not associated here anymore.
Right.
You can't. So keeping that energy flow is important in all of those ways.
It's the keeping the physical body alive is the energy flow, right?
Yeah.
And that means...
I also think it keeps my awareness alive. There needs to be a certain amount of energy flow that allows me to be conscious and aware of my existence.
Well, yeah, you have to have a certain amount of electrical charge to be consciously
Because
aware.
I've definitely seen bodies that were alive that were not necessarily aware of their existence.
And also you have to have a developmental stage of the brain, like, because kids are more in theta brain wave, they're not as conscious of beta, they're more in theta, so their brains are like all neuroplastic and developing like sponges and not able to have the emotional awareness to make choice and decision, which is what regulation really allows you to do. To full circle, what I was going to say is you talk about responsibility and reaction at one point, and I just wanted to fold back to that and just talk about the reaction, that what your emotional work does, what muscle response testing teaches us to do. Hold on one second, let's just pause. Sorry for the interruption. What I was saying was reactions are the what your emotional work does, what muscle response testing does is it teaches us what is causing a reaction in the body that's bringing us up, what's causing a reaction in the body that's bringing us down, and then the emotional work and all the other things allow us the free will to choose where we go. What are we going to allow something to influence us? Are we going to allow our magnetic field to be strong enough and without gaps in it, essentially, from my perspective, so that it's the influence, and whether there's mold in the bathroom of the lovely hotel that I got to stay in. Recently that was full of black mold, and I didn't turn on the air conditioner for 7 days as I was in there because I knew it was also full of mold.
Sure.
So I just let the fresh air and the geckos be my solution to that. And yeah, I felt a little funky after day 5 or 6, but I cleared it out as soon as I got out of that hotel.
Right. So that's all good regulation.
Right.
It's also the aspect of knowing that you're part of the environment, you can interact with the environment, you're not necessarily going to go up and lick the black mold, but you're not going to be freaked out over it either because, let's say on the low side, 40% of how my system responds and reacts to everything is what normally people would call placebo. Let's just look at it that way. Okay. 40% of how I perceive things is going to be a placebo, which means what I'm thinking about and what I believe to be so suddenly is true, right? And there's a difference between what is true and what is a fact. So we could look at that at some point because that's fun and interesting. But if I suddenly go to a place of going, what's true for me is that my system is strong and I can handle this and I'm aware of it and I'm not going to be stupid about it, but I'm also not going to freak out over it, knowing that my system is strong, then a good 40% of your system, if you have that ability, a good 40% of your system goes, okay, well, I can tolerate the environment. The environment's awesome.
Mindset.
Yeah.
Overcoming the dog is what I call it, the mammal.
Okay.
And going, hey, Divine's got this. Don't worry. The wolf, the wild, the one, the love, the flow. Yeah. Has this. The dog, the mammal, sit, boo boo. Like, standing under cold water showers. Right. Like, it's okay. I can handle this pain. Right. I can deal with elbow pain. I can deal with a little pressure on my system. Right. And I can still overcome it. Which actually makes me stronger hormesis a little bit. Yes. You don't want to overextend it, right? You don't want to work out 5 hours a day and do cold plunges every day and be intermittent fasting every day and depriving and causing stress. You want to also nurture.
There's a short period of time where you can do that in your life. Yeah. That's important. And if you do that, then there could be benefits. But after that, you shouldn't be doing that. Right. Yeah. Right. Then after that, it's called resting on your laurels.
My 65-year-old husband giggles.
Soon to be 66, but anyway.
Soon to be 66. He sits back a little bit farther in his chair for those that aren't watching.
So, I think all of that comes into play when it comes into this idea of my system responding to the environment that it's in. And that's really what we're talking about, right? We're just talking about responding to the environment that I'm in on a true energetic frequency level because they've discovered and we have seen over the last 27 years that that's really the first response the body has, right?
It's
and
electrical.
So is that electromagnetic response. And then after that you can think of it in any way you want and you can play with it any way you want. But I like clients to realize that, that's the first thing. So there's another electrical response that my system also responds to on a physiological sense, and that's every word that I've ever said and every thought that I've ever had. So if I hold a particular thought, that thought is subject B. You think it's inside, but that thought is actually subject B to subject A. So it's going to rise your electrical energy, it's going to be neutral to your electrical energy, or it's going to lower your electrical energy. And if I continue to give energy to the thought, then whichever one of those three things it does will become stronger.
And that's why really I look at your emotional work as working on the mind and breaking up the mind, whether it's the breath work you teach, whether it's the emotional work you do, whether it's the shaman-y, Chinese medicine-y stuff you do, or it's the iMate. It's all about getting the brain to reorganize and the system to reorganize to allow the brain to be controlled.
In a state of ease.
To be
in a
tamed.
So
free will can take over and you can override it and go, okay, listen, there's the mold sitting there. You don't have to freak out.
Right.
You can, make sure you open the windows. You got fresh air.
Yeah, do what you can do in the physical world. And then after that, do what you know you can do in the energetic world.
Right.
Which is psycho-emotional world. Yeah.
And that trust, that love, which I've seen from heart rate variability from doing Sound of Soul, actually increases the frequency. Hello, Energy Flow listeners and viewers. I have something that you just won't want to miss. we are offering a special sale on our foundational masterclass where Ayn and I unlock the secrets of muscle response testing. So keep an eye out on Monday, October 28th. You will not want to miss this one. So we're talking about the electrical system.
Yeah.
And how the body's an electrical being, and we've talked about energy and be and all the great things.
Okay.
And speaking about the electrical impulse of the body, right? And my part of the story was that I came to you and you said be and all that, and then it was a few years later that we were introduced to the European biological medicine, and we were introduced to heart rate variability and that whole quantitative assessment, you know, like actually assessing the energy.
That all the scientists enjoy.
Yeah,
right?
that like made me all hot and bothered and foaming at the mouth. So the live blood analysis, the CRT, but mostly I want to talk about HRV because as you know, or maybe you don't know, but no, I'm just kidding, of course you know. Over the last few years, I've really focused on educating about lymph and fascia.
Mm-hmm.
This year it's all about heart rate variability. It'll probably be for a few years because what I feel is that the medicine we do is really regulation medicine, right? It's terrain, it's ecosystem, it's looking at the environment. And it's, like you said, with subject A, subject B, and everything, the world being subject B, everything in the planet, do those two frequencies harmonize? Do they have dissonance or do they upregulate each other?
Right.
And how do they interact? Because the interaction of two beings coming together, two frequencies coming together, is what life is.
Yeah, sure.
So can you speak from that perspective about heart rate variability and your take, like your side of the story, but your take on
I think for me, heart rate variability is just a good indication of how the whole system is either perceiving or not perceiving its environment, how it's responding to its environment, how much emotional regulation the person has as well, and how much of the emotions are having a physiological effect on that individual. So I think the heart rate variability is a great snapshot in time to see how the system is generally functioning, you know, and how the person is dealing with their perceived external environment.
And from your perspective, how important has heart rate variability been in regards to our...
Well, I mean, I think it shows the progression of someone getting quote unquote better or healthier or maintaining their health or even enhancing their health. So, you know, I think it's a great way for people to see what they're doing in the center and how it has an actual effect on a test. So I think that's really important for folks. You know?
So a lot of, in the world now, in the biohacking world, there's a lot of people testing heart rate variability. They're doing it on their Oura rings, their Whoop watches, some of them on their phone.
Okay.
Can you just speak to that type of assessment versus the type of assessment we're doing at the clinic?
Well,
and why you would test would be the other reason, the other question rather than.
So I think there's, just like anything else, there's a vast difference between doing something in a clinical setting and doing something, you know, at home that you can buy over the counter. So I think that's the first difference, and you have to realize that there's a certain amount of, if I put a ring around my finger and it's registering my pulse and giving me information because it's shooting a beam of light into my system, you know, that'll give you a certain amount of information. I think it's different if you lay the person down with the strap around their chest and do something a little more clinical to get a real good baseline. And the heart rate variability gives us a ton of information outside of just what's going on that way. I think it's two different ways of looking at it. So for me, you know, I think a good heart rate variability, depending on the person, every couple of, you know, twice a year or something to see how well the system is functioning and all of that. But again, I look at it as, you know, how much of the psycho-emotional component is affecting this person's physiology. Because if we see that and shift that, the heart rate variability changes, and the body's ability to function with less friction is enhanced. And that's ultimately what we're looking to do, right? Create less friction in the system, both externally and internally, and then you go back into the flow.
Yeah.
It's easier to be.
That emotional component is huge, and from the perspective of assessing the electrical energy. Does energy flow? Does energy not flow? Which is what we started to talk about, right? It's the muscle response testing is a way for them to do it in a non-quantitative way at home. Or pendulums, right? Does energy flow? Does energy not flow? In different subject matters, from the food we eat to the clothes we're wearing to, I wouldn't maybe depend upon the person you're marrying necessarily. But you would also like to know, while I wouldn't base a decision upon it, I'd also like to know that the person I'm marrying, I do have an alignment with and do emotional work around that.
Certainly, yeah, absolutely. And
to go back in time and do that.
Muscle testing, you also, if you're muscle testing yourself, you also have to be aware of the aspect that you're really testing, the primary aspect that you're testing is actually the psycho-emotional response to it. Unless you're really good at shutting off your desires or what you think should be and all of that, and strictly,
your witness.
Yeah, if you can just strictly test the physical body, then that's awesome. But most of the time, I would say that when we're muscle testing ourselves, what we're really testing is the emotional congruency to that for myself. And then if I'm aware of that, I can know that and use that, or I can attempt to work at quieting that aspect of it and just going, well, what's my physical body? What's this physical organism responding to or not responding to? Not so much
on the emotional level.
My perspective of life, yes. So,
but it's always the energetic level, really. Is energy flowing or is energy not flowing?
Yeah, but my perspective and my psyche can control that energy flow on or off.
Right. And the heart drives more information to the brain than the brain drives the other way, which is, I would really look at our practices, like you work more with the brain and helping that become more neuroplastic.
And the gut, the enteric brains,
Yeah, and the gut feeling and all that, holding that information, and the emotional body, releasing the emotional body, and while we release the physical body, so that the energy can flow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we're all working on the mental body and the spiritual.
Right, and there's a difference, sure. I had a conversation this morning at breakfast with someone, and I said, fascia is that substance in the chicken breast that you can peel away, it kind of holds all the organs in place, and it holds it's surrounding the muscles and everything. It has a lot to do with how energy flows through the body, right? How electrical energy flows through the body, how emotional energy flows through the body, because we were talking about stiffness. I got this stiffness. I said, just come to the office to work on your fascia. And he said, what's fascia? And I said, well, here's the deal. It's not so much your muscles. It's this. If my fascia gets twisted, then you're going to have pain and you're going to have less movement. And it's going to bind you up. So,
fascinating.
It's all of
fascinating.
It's all of that. So yeah, it's a good combination because if you do one without the other, you only get so far.
Yeah, and that's what
And that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, they're both great tools. All the things you do. So, we're kind of self-promoting, but it's true. It's just, I'm sorry, we've been doing it for a long time, and it's pretty great. I love what we do. So, anything else you want to add about energy, frequency, or anything like that? I know we're going to have you do something for the forum.
Good, yeah.
Excuse me, in regards to perhaps breath work. But we're also going to give, as a result of this podcast, we're going to give a little discount, quite a big discount actually, for your muscle response testing class, so that you can learn how to test this energy and test yourself and test your kids and test your animals and all the things. Does energy flow? Does energy not flow? So that you can start to control and realize how the body really works, how the universe works, and how this all plays together.
Yeah. I would mention one more thing, and we can close it up.
Yeah.
Because it happened yesterday with a new person.
Okay.
And that is the idea that, why would I have a quote-unquote energy dump with someone that I love, that I'm with all the time? Why would that happen?
Energy dump? You mean an energy weakness?
Well,
energy
I don't
not
like
flowing.
The energy suddenly doesn't flow.
The muscle test indicated that the energy didn't flow when you thought about a certain person that
or had
you
them
loved.
with you. Right, or they're sitting next to you.
Okay.
And so I said, well, here's why that happens. You can do it with anything, and this is how a sensitivity can be created, right? So if back in the day, doctors used to say if you have Charlie horses, you get up in the middle of the night, you've got cramps in your legs, eat a banana every day. It's got potassium, it's got magnesium, it'll help with the cramps. But if you do that for about 40 days in a row, you'll create an energetic sensitivity to the banana. It doesn't mean the banana is actually a bad thing. It just means you've shown it to your body so frequently that your system actually becomes energetically depleted because of it, or it has intolerant of it. Yeah, right? So diversity is really good in our diet, but what happens with a person? So if I spend a bunch of time with the same person all the time, you'll literally create an energetic, what looks like a weakness to that person, because there's a history that starts to build up. So what I did with this person was I said, well, go ahead and think about your husband. I know you love your husband. He loves you. It's a good relationship, but just think about him. You've been together X amount of years. And when she thought about it, it caused the muscle to open. It caused a regulation change, right? And she said she didn't understand that. I said, well, do me a favor. Just say, think about me for a second. Think about me. We've just met. Think about me. I'm standing in front. She goes, okay. And she was totally strong. I said, the reason you're strong is because we have no history. So the other thing that can set up those energetic weaknesses and to understand that which I expose myself consistently to will ultimately create that energetic frequency. And it can be changed because I want to stay with the person I love. And I want to make sure that energy is rising, if nothing else, at least neutral, but not depleting one or the other. And so it was just an interesting way to understand if my environment isn't diverse, if my food isn't diverse, if the people that I'm hanging, what's the old saying? Distance makes the heart grow fonder, right? Oh yeah, separate for a while and then see what it's like when you come back. Everybody goes, oh, it's always different. It's always exciting to see. She was just away for a long time, right, in Bali. She came home. We were all excited to see her. So the frequency was different. So just realize that whether it's a banana or a person.
Be different frequently. And that's been the same with fascia, in all honesty, is move differently frequently, right? That's the little tagline, is move differently frequently. Right. Because that's how you open up your fascia.
That's why good yoga is such a great thing, because those poses create different movements. And take different types of yoga classes. Don't always do the same type of yoga class, because you'll always do the same movements. Right. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you for joining us on the Energy Flow podcast, and join us for the second part at the Energy Flow Forum. If you are interested in going a little deeper into these subject matters, we are here for you. And we thank you so much for your time and your attention. And if this resonated with you, please do share this. And please do make comments and like it, because it does help drive up other people to find our podcast. So we appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for being you.
Thank you for being. Continue to be.
Thank you for being. Have a good day, Will. Well, champions of the vibe flow community, energy flowing through that body, thank you for sharing this time with us and getting through the entire episode today. I know time is what we're spending here as our currency on this planet as people, and it really does mean a lot that as we devote our time and energy into creating this content, that you stuck with us throughout it. So if you would like more on this particular subject from this expert and get that free gift, make sure to register for our Energy Flow Forum. And you too, with a very nominal price, can access all sorts of upgraded content and deeper dives into the very subjects that you love: energy, fascia, lymphatics, oxygen, and water. As you know, as always on this show and any content that we create, it is for your own health purposes. This is not intended to be advice or medical diagnoses or professional advice. It's purely information that if it resonates with you and you apply it and you upgrade, we love to hear about it. What a great coincidence, and we're happy to be on that journey with you. If this doesn't resonate with you and you know somebody it will, pass it along. And in the meantime, know that we truly are here to show you and explain to you and be with you through this lovely journey of life, and to share our experiences together and help each other upgrade, because that's how we're going to do this together, collaborating with love at the center. I'm Kelly Kennedy, and I am so grateful from my heart to yours to share this time, energy, and space with you.